Knowledge. Welcome to today's webinar. What can Excel do for you?
Let's take a look at Excel. Here's a typical Excel workbook that you come across, and you could have 1,000 rows, 2,000 rows, and what you really don't want to do is you don't want to use this paint bucket to color things in. If you use the paint bucket to color things in, it's going to take too long, right? It also kind of breaks the cell. The cell no longer pays attention to other things. But let me show you what I mean. The idea is that you create a list of data like this, and then you format it as a table. Formatting it as a table also does something else. It creates what's called a data list or a data range. So when I choose this, I get the marching ants. Most of the time, you can put a check mark in there, right? Most of the time, you do have headers. And when I click OK, it also formats it for me too. The table, much like the sheet, is given a name. Here, my table is called Table 1. I'll just call it Sales and give it a better name than Table 1. I then have all these different table tools. I have a button to summarize this with a pivot table. I can remove any duplicates. I can insert a slicer. Slicer is like a filter. I could put a filter on the books, and now I've got buttons to actually filter the table. When you click into the table, your table tools reappear. If you click outside the table tools go away. You also have checkmark boxes too, like a total row. If I put the checkmark in there, it creates a total row, and well, now I've got drop downs. And I don't have to do a total. I could do the average, the minimum, the maximum. But even the totals work different now too. They're dynamic. When I make a selection and I filter the table, the totals also change too. Now that it's a table, it's a lot easier for you to insert charts and graphs. If I go to insert, I could insert, say, a 2D column chart and insert it easily, simply. The really great thing is now I've basically built a dashboard, because when a chart is based on a table, it constantly pays attention to the table. And if the table is filtered in any way, you see that. So within a few minutes, I built myself a dashboard. Let me get rid of this this chart here. I'll also get rid of my slicer. I don't need that anymore. And that also includes formulas too. If I add another column, it simply extends the table. I don't have to do that. I didn't do that. It just automatically happens. And when you make formulas, right, it works just as well. Now, most people would write a formula that looks like this. And this is a very static formula. Sorry, D2. That's an extremely static formula. But if I create that formula, it copies that formula all the way down. So even though it's a static formula, the formula becomes dynamic. You'll notice that these formulas are different, though. The ones on the total row, they use words. And those are the only types of formulas that I teach. So I don't really write formulas that look like this. My formulas use words. I find it's a lot easier to understand the words. I type in the name of the function. You can use your mouse to highlight the cells that you want to add up. And then it writes the formula for me. It's called a DAX formula. DAX stands for dynamic expression. If I head to sheet 2, it's easy and simple for me to do these totals. I don't have to memorize exactly what the cell addresses are. I just put in equals, the name of the function, right, sum, the name of the table, sales, and then to refer to the different columns within the table, you use an opening squared bracket. I would like January, so that's Jan. Close all my brackets and hit my enter key. I can even use my autofill handle to fill this across, but the word changes. It's easy and simple for people to break apart and understand my formula. Right? As long as they understand that there's a table called sales, and as long as they understand there's something called March. And what I usually do is I usually give the sheets the same name. This way, it's easy for people to kind of figure out exactly where the information is coming from.
Greg, looking at the formulas, can you explain the difference between the square and kind of rounded brackets?
The rounded brackets contain the function. So if I type equals sum opening bracket, the opening bracket shows you that you are working inside of a function. When you want to specify a table, you simply type the table's name. Tables don't require any brackets at all. Then, once you type the table's name, to access the different columns within the table, you use squared brackets. For people that write SQL or SQL, this is going to make a lot of sense. And for those of you that don't write SQL statements or are looking at getting into SQL, this starts to get you ready for SQL or SQL. So anytime you see squared brackets in a finished formula, you know that they are referring to columns within a table. When you take a look at the syntax of a formula, here they've got number 2, see, in squared brackets here. Yeah. What that means is that's optional. So when you take a look at the syntax and you see squared brackets, that means optional. When you take a look at a finished formula that does something and you see squared brackets, you know full well they're using a table. That's the only time you ever use squared brackets. See, even a simple cell, here I've got taxes, I'll do 13%, right? And I can call this and give that a name. I can give it a much better name than H1. I can call it ONT tax rate. Then it becomes a lot easier and simpler for me to create these formulas. But when I refer to that cell address, right, I'll refer to this one times, right, ONT tax rate. ONT tax rate is not in squared brackets because it's not within a table. And I can use my autofill on this because Ontario tax rate is absolute. I don't have to use those dollar signs in the formula. I'll take that out. On the Home tab, you have something called conditional formatting. And with conditional formatting, it draws your eye to a number, a situation, based on a certain condition. Here, I'll take out the total. I don't need this total anymore. Here, I can just highlight the raw numbers, the numbers that make up the totals. I can head to conditional formatting, and I can put something in there like a data bar. This is more eye candy more than it is anything else. So it's not terribly functional. You do have other things, though, like you can highlight all the cells that are greater than a certain number or between certain numbers, or highlight the top 10%, or the bottom 10%. Color scales are based on certain criteria, certain thresholds that you can set. Same with the icon sets. Here, if I choose an icon set, right, like the traffic lights, the first time that you choose it, you don't get to pick the rules. But if you want to pick the rules, you go back into conditional formatting and manage those rules. You can create as many rules as you want. Here, I'm only using one. I can click on Edit Rule and edit the rule. This rule is based on a percentage. I can tell it to base it on a number. A specific number, like, say, 350. Anything equal to or greater than 350, give it a green traffic light. For the next threshold, I could base that on 250. And it doesn't have to be greater than and equal to. It can just be greater than. So that means anything 250 and below is red. When I click OK, I can click Apply to see what that's going to look like. And if I don't agree with that rule, then I can still edit the rule from here. If I do agree with it, then I can click OK. That's the difference between OK and Apply. Apply allows you to take a look at the change and still go back and make changes. If you know this is exactly what you want, you can just go ahead and click OK. But now I can sort and filter based on color. So in the January column, and only in the January column, if I want to see the red ones, I click on red, and it filters everything else out in the January column. When I'm finished, I can clear the filter. Now, single cell addresses are not the only thing that you can name. You can also name an entire range. As an example, I'm finished with these two. So let me get rid of these two. And instead, I'll highlight my title here. When you copy things, it goes to your clipboard. Right in that section, copy and paste, there's a word clipboard, and right across the word from clipboard, that's a button, and that opens your clipboard. So I can take these headings and copy them to my clipboard. I could also highlight the entire table and copy it to my clipboard. I could just highlight the names of the books and copy it to my clipboard. The advantage of that is if I need to put this in a Word document or even a PowerPoint presentation, it's the exact same clipboard no matter which program I open up. PowerPoint, Outlook, Excel, they all have the exact same clipboard, and it makes it very simple and very easy for you to move stuff back and forth. It even recognizes it as a table, a real table. I can click somewhere else, and I can just put just the names of the books. Click somewhere else, put the headings. Anyways, let me get out of there. So over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in all the headings, all right? Because what I want to do is I want to create a vertical lookup, a V lookup. F2 is going to have a name. F2, that'll be known as book lookup. Perfect. And of course, this table is known as sales. If I highlight this list of books, I want this to be a dynamic list of books, and I want to put it in a dropdown. So I highlight my list of books, and I click into my name box. So I'm not renaming the table. I am renaming these three cells. I'm using the name box to do that. I click into the name box, and then I call it book list. When you hit your enter key, it's unnerving because it goes away and it feels like it didn't work. But then to use that list, you can head to your data tab. In the data tab is where you'll find data validation, and this is how we control data input. So when I go to data validation, right now, all of the cells allow any value at all, but they don't have to. You can tell it that, look, I only accept whole numbers in this cell or in this group of cells or decimals. Or I could say, no, it's a date. You have to put a date, and I can be very specific that the date has to be between these two dates. This way, they get a proper error message that comes back. This way, you're trying to keep them on the straight and narrow so they don't enter things that they shouldn't. In this case, I'd like to use a list, and the list is equal to book list. The fun part is the error alert. Right? This is where you get to yell at them for not picking from the list. Nice little title here. What are you doing? Please pick from the list next time the alarm goes off. Right? They got to pick from the list. Now they get a list. And the list is dynamic too. If you want to add to a table, turn off the total row. But now I can add another book. And when I check my list, the book's there. It's dynamic. And the only way it works this way is if you put the list inside of a table and give the list a name. It's the only way this works. Now the VLOOKUP is easier because I'm using words instead of cell addresses. VLOOKUP, opening bracket, lookup value. What are you trying to look up? Well, I'm trying to look up book lookup, comma, where? Well, it's sitting in sales, comma. The column index number is the column you want returned, so I want January, which is the second column. 99% of the time, you want false, because if the book isn't there, give me an error message, right? Don't let me pick Gone Girl and give me the sales for Harry Potter, because this is not going to give you an error message if it doesn't find the book. If I say false, you get an error message, and that's what you want. I choose a book, and it looks it up. I can copy the formula across, but I'll have to change the column index number. So 2 has to become a 3, and this one becomes 4. Now, if this is going to be a massive list, and I want to start importing other data, and I want to start doing massive pivot tables, then I'm going to have to use PowerPivot. If you're missing PowerPivot and you've got 2010, you're going to have to download it and install it. And while you're downloading and installing PowerPivot, you might as well download and install PowerQuery. In 2013 and 2016, PowerPivot has to be turned on, but in 2013, PowerPivot and PowerQuery have to be turned on. To see what options you have and to see whether you have to turn stuff on or not or install them, head to File, go to Options. When you go to File and you go to Options, if you go to Add-ins, this is all the stuff that a lot of times is turned off in Excel. These are like plugins or extensions. The ones that I'm looking for are COM add-ins. If I click on Go, I just put a check mark in everything I've got there. Depending on your version, the list is going to be different. So eventually, you get this tab called PowerPivot. For those of you using 2010 and 2013, you'll have another tab that shows up called PowerQuery. So in order to get this table into the data model, I got to click this button, and I got to add it. When I add it, this opens up PowerPivot, and this manages your data model. From here, I can import from a bunch of different sources, different databases, data feeds, and if I click other sources, there's a bunch of other stuff that sits here. I'm going to use an Access database here. It's called Northwind. It's an old database. It's been around for a long time. If I need to, I can test the connection, enter a username and a password. If I hit next, I can either write an SQL statement or I can select from a list of tables. I'd rather select from a list. I need customers, employees. I'll get order details, orders. As you can see, it's easy and simple for me to import information from a database. All I have to go through is this list and just find what I'm looking for. In order to use this product, though, you really have to understand database relationships. That's kind of important. If you're still not sure about the relationship part, you can click on Select Related Tables, and you'll be able to work with the data at least. It's not the ideal button. It's not the ideal situation. You want to control what goes into the data model, but it'll work. I'll hit Finish. The idea is that this is now loaded into the data model, and the advantage of that is that it does not slow down Excel. If you were to import all of this as data, as sheets in Excel, Excel starts to slow down a little bit. If you put it into the data model can handle 100 million records. No problem at all. It even looks like Excel. Remember that DAX formula, right? The one that I did for total where it used words, right? And the other ones where I was using words. Well, that's the only thing that works here is words. You can't use cell addresses. There are none. So if I want to take quantity and multiply it by unit price, I can do that here by adding a column. Equals, and honestly, you don't even need me at this point. You already know the formula. Opening bracket, because I'm referring to a column in a table. Quantity, spelled correctly, there we are. Close the bracket times, opening bracket, unit price. That's it. You got to admit, that's a heck of a lot easier than other formulas you've been doing. It's a lot easier for me to explain. It's even smart enough to format it. I've got to rename the column, so I'll right click, rename. I'll call it line total. That's really what it is. And now we've got a brand new column that we can use in a pivot table or in a report, in a chart or graph. Now, you've imported this information from a database, and I was talking about relationships. If I go to the diagram view, slowly but surely, these are all the relationships. If any table doesn't have a relationship, you can't use it. Right? There's sales, there's supplies, and I can't use these. they're not related to any other table. So in all honesty, they're useless. All right, let me get out of here. And I'm going to go back to Excel. Let me insert another sheet. I mentioned PowerQuery, and in 2016, it's in the Data tab, and it's called Get and Transform. If you go to your PowerQuery tab, it's still called Get and Transform. Either way, go to Get and Transform, and I got lots of ways of getting data, like from a database, but a lot of different databases. The Azure Cloud, online services, and other sources. Let me do the same exercise, but I'm going to do it from here, and I'm only going to grab one table. All right, so I'm going to go back to Northwind. I'm going to import this thing. Slowly but surely, eventually, here it comes. All right, it's kind of weird. It puts the queries first, so these are not tables. These are queries. All right, so, all right, I'll import orders here. So I'm going to take orders, I'm going to load it, and I'm going to load it into the spreadsheet. It's going to go out and grab the data for me. Slowly but surely grabbing the data. Awesome. If I make this into a pivot table, one of the problems that I have with this table is the customer ID. See, now that it's a table, I've got a button here to summarize this with a pivot table. Put the pivot table in a brand new worksheet. So I can take the customer ID, drop it into rows. I can take the order ID, drop that underneath the customer ID, and maybe grab, say, the shipping fee and figure all that out. But the problem is that I don't know who customer 1 is or customer 7. And that's my biggest issue with a pivot table. If there's more information that sits in other places that would easily fill this in, then that's what I want to work with. And that's PowerPivot. See, if I go back to PowerPivot and I insert a pivot table using PowerPivot, it's different. I get access to all the tables. So I can take that same thing, right? I can take orders, and I can take that order ID, that same order ID, and drop it into rows. Now, I don't need the customer ID. That's not what I want. Instead, I want the customer's information. I want the company name. Now, because these come from two different tables, when I drop the company name over top of the order ID, it doesn't straighten out the order IDs. It doesn't match the order ID to the company. It just randomly shows me different order IDs. Well, not exactly random. They are in an order, right? Numerical order. If I head back to the orders table to straighten all this out, I need one more field, but I need to put it into values. Now I can take the shipping fee, drop the shipping fee, and it straightens everything out, and I get the company's name. That's what the relationships do. The relationships in PowerPivot allow you to use data from all kinds of different places. And as long as it's all related, I can figure out the customer. I can even figure out the employee that is responsible for taking that company's order. That's the employee's name, and these are all the different companies that employee has serviced, along with the orders that company took. Along with the orders that employee took from that company. So I know who to yell at for order number 79. The more data that you have, the bigger the story that you can tell. And it doesn't get any bigger than the internet. If I have data that I want to pull in, and it's from a web page, this makes it really simple and easy for me to pull data down from web pages. Maybe I want to take a look at exchange rates based on the shipping fees. I could go to exchangerate.com, spelled correctly. And this type of website is an absolute mess. It's a disaster. But I can come here and I can pull down currency rates. This is what the page actually looks like, and it's a disaster. You can't copy and paste this. Graphics don't copy and paste. And they've got the headings, again, partway through, it's not even partway through the table, right? So you can't have that. You got to fix that. And this fixes it. In fact, if I click edit, that actually gets me into PowerQuery. It even says so at the top. And in PowerQuery, I can see, yeah, I don't need, I don't need this column. In fact, I don't need this one. I don't need this one. I can remove these two. And I may not even want all the countries either. I can go through and say, yeah, you know what? I just want this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, right? The EU, just to see who's left. Right? See if there's anybody still part of it. Right? India, Iceland, right? And I don't know, a bunch of other places, right? UK, United States. But it filters it. Rather than bring all of this information into your data model, you only bring the stuff that you need. I close it, I load it, that's it. And it's live. So when the currency rates change, they change here too. I don't have to go back and I don't have to do this again. If I head to properties here, right, these are my connection properties. If I click this button, my query properties, I can tell it to refresh every 60 minutes or every 30 minutes or whatever. So now every 60 minutes, it's going to go out and refresh itself. And if I need this in my data model, because it's not just yet, but if I do need this in my data model, then I just add this to my data model. The next step is for me to relate this to one of these tables so that I can use these tables and use the currency rates. And I mean, that's not the only place. There's also different APIs that you can connect to too, like this one, right? HTTP : HTTP : // swappy.co/API/ people. This is an API on the internet that you can connect to. And there's millions of these things. When you connect to an API, though, you have to specify how you want the results, right, in a list. So I have to drill into the list. And then these are all the records that make up the list. Don't click on the word record. You'll be very upset when you do. Click way over here, and then you can see the record. Don't click on the word record. When I click on to table, it just takes that information, right, parses the information. If there's any delimiters, it'll usually choose it for you. There is none. And that's it. It pulls down all the different records. To see the columns that it's pulled down, you have to click this button and expand the columns. But if you do that, uncheck use original column prefix. When I click OK, it expands it. And now I can close it and load it. But that's connected to a website on the internet. So when they add more records, more stuff shows up. If I want to use this in my data model, I have to go to PowerPivot and I have to add this to my data model. It doesn't get added automatically. Once it gets added, though, I need a way of relating this to the rest of my data model, or else I can't use this. Now, I'm not even scratching 1% of what Excel does for you. Not even close. Some of the different tools that I've shown you are handled in different levels. So you've seen a little bit from level 1, 2, and 3, and a little bit from some of our more advanced classes. But as you can see, there's a lot to all this. You're not going to learn it in 3 classes. There's quite a bit to this. Coming out to the class and joining a class, you start to develop good habits and not self-taught habits. And I'm quite sure there's a few things that I've shown you today that is going to change the way that you work with Excel and should change the way that you work with Excel. Now, when you take a look at a spreadsheet and you see somebody type the word subtotal halfway through a spreadsheet, you can rest assured that person has no idea what they're doing in Excel. And if you come across different Excel spreadsheets that look like that have subtotals and totals all over the place, and they look like a report, they don't work. They're broken. It's either a report or it's data. It can't be both. You can't have the best of both worlds. You make your data, and then from your data, you make charts and graphs and reports. If they want a subtotal, that's a report. If they want this all added up, chances are that's a report. So really try and separate the report from the data part. And when you go back and you take a look at your spreadsheets, go back and make tables. Right? You can keep those reports, but base them off of tables, base them off of real data and data that actually works and will work for you. But like I said, this still isn't even 1% of what this program does. There's a lot more to this. I hope you enjoyed the different topics that I presented, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar. Back to you, Sarah.
All right, so we just have a few questions we're going to go through. So one for PowerPivot, instead of using external tables, can you use multiple sheets?
Absolutely. When you pull the data down, you'll have to make sure that you add them to the data model. So yes. And then, of course, once they're in the data model, you're going to need a way of relating them.
Okay. And this was actually asked by a few people. So how do you get PowerPivot as an option on the menu bar?
If you're using 07 or 2010, you're going to have to download and install it, which means that you're going to have to sweet talk IT. Remember, in case a Red Bull goes a long way. If I click on File and I go to Options, in 2013 and 2016 and 2019, you're going to have to turn the options on. So you head to File, you head to Options, you go to Add-ins, and they're COM add-ins. So not Excel add-ins. Switch this to COM add-ins and check off everything that you see. Don't worry, you won't hurt anything. You'll just be turning on a whole bunch of different functions and a bunch of stuff you've never seen before.
Okay, so earlier you showed connecting the tables to website data. Will the tables you create update as the website updates?
Absolutely. Here on the right-hand side, I've got my my queries. I'll just move this over, you can see it better. When I hover over the top of the queries, it tells me the last time it was refreshed, the load status, the data source, and you'll be able to set up a schedule so it refreshes every 30 minutes or every 60 minutes, or If you think the table has changed, you can always go to your table tools and always hit refresh.
Here's one. Can we create a table within a table?
No, that would not make sense at all. All of your data needs to be in separate tables. And in fact, if you're looking at the theory of creating tables, then go to YouTube and type in data normalization and watch the video. You need to learn how to normalize tables and normalize data. And then that might explain your desire to put a table inside of a table and explain why you would never ever do that.
So in doing totals, is it best practice to use the auto sum function or to write out a formula?
The best is to use a DAX formula and to not use auto sum or to not have a static formula. The problem with static formulas is that every single cell needs to be calculated by Excel. When you use names in formulas, the names are cached by Excel and used by Excel's memory over and over and over again. In short, it's a much more efficient use of Excel's memory if you were to use DAX formulas than for you to write a formula out or use AutoSum. So try and use tables and try and use DAX.
Well, as at the Global Knowledge website, you'll find other courses that we offer around Excel, but other free resources as well, like webinars, white papers, and special offers. So please be sure to check out the website for anything else that you're interested in. And